Hey guys, and holy crap is there a lot to talk about! So yeah, welcome to another GameXplain discussion. I'm your host, Andre Segers, and this time we're joined by Derek Binder to again talk about all the news from the latest Smash Bros. Direct for the Wii U and 3DS that just happened. So let's get right into it. So I don't know if you just heard me, Derek, but holy crap, there is a lot to talk about. This is insane. So before we get into the nitty-gritty, let me just say a couple quick things. One, this is only going to be like an overview discussion. We're going to have a lot more in-depth analysis and discussions coming up soon, after this. There's just way too much to cover here. So yeah, stay tuned for tons of Smash coverage. But with that, Derek, let's start off with your reaction to this entire thing.
I think you just said it. It's holy crap. I mean, the sheer fact that we have to be prudent with what we're saying here because there is so much to talk about. As people said, we can take 5 screens of Smash and talk about it for 20 minutes if we really want to. And here we have 39 minutes of coverage to talk about. We could be here for 3 hours discussing every little thing about this game. And we're going to try not to do that because we're already discussing, what do we want to now analyze? How do we want to break up? What do we want to do? What's focusing here? Who takes what? What's going on here? Right. Damn, PAX is coming up. What are we going to do about that? Should I cancel my trip just so we can have more time to cover it? Right. It's ridiculous. And the great thing about it is, one of the common things we've had is that we're always saying, yeah, I'm excited for Smash Brothers, but I wouldn't say I'm like super hyped for it. That hype is here. It is full on.
Yeah, you nailed it. This is what they needed to do, and they delivered. I think. Don't get me wrong. I don't think everything was a complete home run, but on the whole, this thing was amazing. They just tons of announcements, tons of new tons of new details, new stages, new everything. It's crazy how much they announced here. So yeah, so overall, you'd say you were pretty happy with what came out of this.
Oh, very happy.
Okay. So, yeah, I totally agree. They really hit out of the park. I had no idea it was going to be a 40-minute, thing. And this was basically like a year or two's worth of Miiverse content crammed into a 40-minute video. So yeah, this can keep us busy for a while. So we're probably going to be we're going to do our analysis a little bit different than usual. We're going to be breaking this one up into segments. Otherwise, it'd be probably weeks before you saw one from us. Which actually is how we did it the first time, so...
Yeah, we don't want to have a repeat of the other one.
Exactly, so we're going to do this one differently. Okay, so let's get right to... I don't even know where to begin with this. There's, again, so much to cover, but let's start off with, real quick, the release date. So they announced that this is coming out... initially we thought it would be coming out at the same time. No. 3DS is coming out first this summer, followed by the Wii U version later on this year.
I personally say thank God that it's a staggered release. And it's also really intelligent, let's be honest here. Because if they release at the same time, they'd compete with each other. They'd have... people would be having to choose one over the other. With the 3DS version coming out, people getting a taste. It's obviously not that it's a lesser version, but the lesser version. The Wii U is obviously the one that people were the most excited about. It's the one in HD that has all the kinds of stuff. But as we're going to talk about later, the 3DS has a lot to be excited about as well. But to have it on a staggered release to give people that taste, it's almost like a preview of what Smash Bros. Wii U is going to be like by releasing the 3DS in the summer. Also, there's very little competition there.
Right.
And I think it's going to do just gangbusters in that time frame.
I think it all makes sense. I will say I'm just slightly disappointed that my first experience with the new Smash Bros. Game will be on the 3DS. Don't get me wrong, I'm super hyped for it. I think it looked great in this trailer. I just don't think it will be as impressive as it would have been had I been playing the Wii U version first. But with that said, this was by far the best move they could have done. I think doing the reverse, releasing the Wii U version followed by the 3DS one, would make the 3DS one almost immaterial. I don't think it would have done as well, because I think the Wii U one is what people are looking forward to the most. So as you said, this is a really good preview. And, calling it a preview does kind of do it a disservice, because this is a full game, and I really liked what I saw here. So yeah, I think it's a good idea. I think we're agreed on that, and it works out really well for us, just making things way easier for us to cover.
Exactly. And you're right, it should not be considered a preview because one of the first details he gave about the 3DS version is that it runs at a full 60 frames per second from across the board, even with the 3D on. The only exceptions seems to be assist trophies and Pokemon, which is a really impressive feat.
Yeah, it's a really clever way they're going about that. I don't know if other games have done it. I'm sure they have. I almost think I don't think it's something you'd even notice. I'm actually even surprised he pointed it out. Maybe just to head off any criticism of it. I think it's a good idea, and if the rest of the game runs at 60 frames per second, that's awesome. Now, speaking of the 3DS version, this is actually maybe a good time to quickly talk about one of the new modes coming to Smash Brothers, specifically the 3DS version only, being Smash Run, which is something Smash Brothers has never done before, and as Sakurai himself points out, actually has roots in a Kirby Air Ride, which is awesome because it borrows from Kirby Air Ride's City Trial mode, which is by far my favorite part of that game. It may be even only the part of the game I actually really loved. So what they're doing here is you have this giant side-scrolling, basically a side-scrolling arena that you and the other multiplayer people are running, they go about, and the goal is to beat up enemies and collect power-ups that power up your individual moveset or your individual character attributes. And then once time is up, I believe 5 minutes, it throws you into an arena where the four of you go at it using whatever powers you gain.
I think that's a brilliant mode. It provides a sense of almost adventure mode from Melee, and combine it with the actual fighting. It's a way to get these other characters back in, because as we also saw, there's random enemies appearing, like Bullet Bills, Goombas, the Reapers from Kid Icarus, Kremlings, just tons of different minor enemies, even some returning Subspace Emissary characters.
Right.
So that's just really cool to put in even more fan service. You can tell they've been working on it since, because this is obviously where that screen where Mario jumps out in the original trailer from. So there's just it seems like a really fun mode. It's asynchronous, and then putting everybody together to see okay, how well did I power myself up?
Right. Yeah, I'm really excited about this mode. I think it's a really cool addition, and it'll help fill the gap of not having as far as we know, not having a story type mode in the game. Yeah, great idea, great reuse of something they did before that worked really well, and it's going to be awesome to see it in Smash Brothers. I'm really excited to fully play that. Okay, now it's always it's hard to break down what the next biggest news is here, but definitely up there has to be the unveiling of a brand new character. And it's even kind of hard to say just that, because in a way there's many new characters, but we'll get to them soon. So the brand new character here came at the very end of the trailer, and it's Greninja from Pokemon, from the new Pokemon games X and Y. So Derek, you're a big Pokemon guy. What is your take on having this character, being the newest one that we know about?
I think it's a great choice as far as Pokemon's concerned, especially if you want to pull from X and Y specifically, because I was thinking about this earlier, there's rumors about X and Y Pokemon appearing in Smash Brothers, so I was thinking what Pokemon would fit this mode, and the only one that really stuck out to me other than Greninja was Howlucha, but I don't think Howlucha is has quite the design to fit, to be pronounced enough to be in Smash Brothers, and Greninja is a much better fit.
Right.
Besides, we get another ninja-like character as a match for Shiek, except in Pokemon form, and just watching him play, he looks awesome.
Yeah, he looked really cool from what I saw. As many of you probably know, I'm not too big into Pokemon these days. I was huge in the first one, so the original 3 always have a special place in my heart. But I will say, this guy looked pretty awesome in combat. Now, with that said, just because I haven't been following Pokemon, I would say, this isn't my favorite new character they've announced. But with that, even putting that doesn't even matter, because what we've seen does look impressive, and it looks like there will be, it looks like he will be a unique looking fighter out there.
Oh yeah, definitely. Just he looks fast. He looks basically ninja-like. He has we can see he has throwing stars. We can see all kinds of other little details, which I'll get into once we get to the analysis.
Right.
Trust me, that's one of the first things we're doing. So Greninja is coming. But overall impressions, I like him.
Okay, yeah, awesome. And yeah, in following the analysis, I'm sure we'll have an in-depth discussion about him too, once we actually are able to figure out how fully he works. Now, speaking of things to cover, as I mentioned before, he's not quite the only new character announced here, although he kind of is too. Because they also announced that a bunch of the characters from the previous game that were part of another character are actually returning as their own standalone characters, such as Charizard, Zero Suit Samus, and Shiek. Before they were all transformations in some way or another, and now they no longer transform at all, and they will all be standalone characters. What's your take on that, Derek?
I think it's a pretty good idea, honestly. I think when people, I know especially with Zelda, I saw so many people who would just automatically pick Shiek first because they preferred Sheik's playstyle. And so, while Shiek was very good, you're also just that down special is just never getting used because you don't want to transform into Zelda. And I think Sakurai realized that, and it provides a way to make these characters feel much more their own. Yeah, it was kind of cool to have the transformation as sort of like a nod to those characters, but I think it works very well on their own. And we were actually kind of right in one of our earlier discussions about Zelda's Armor Knight.
Right.
Phantom Knight is what he's called, yeah.
Yeah, I thought it would be, one of her moves, and a lot of people thought it'd be an assist trophy, and sure enough, it's one of her moves. So that actually is an interesting side effect to separating these characters, is now each of them will gain at least an additional move to replace the transformation. I kind of mixed thoughts on this. Overall, I think it's a good idea. For me at least, and most of the people I've played against, it seemed like you mostly stuck to one character of those sets. With a few exceptions like the Pokemon Trainer where they actually encouraged you to switch between the Pokemon. But for Zelda or Sheik, I found that most people stuck to one or the other. And then Samus was kind of weird in how, once you used your final smash, you were forced into Zero Suit Samus mode. I think it's a good idea. It'll allow them to flesh it out a little bit more. It is unfortunate that a side effect of this is that each of the characters does use a little bit of their uniqueness, because transforming was something most of the characters couldn't do, and now it seems none of the characters will do it. And it does take just a little bit away from each of them, because it is a little bit weird having basically, Zelda and Sheik are literally the same character. They're the same person. So it's kind of weird to have them, two separate versions of the same character, basically, even if they control totally different. But on the whole, I think it's a good idea.
And one of the things you've always mentioned in our Smash discussions is that you want the old characters to feel unique and new, and I think this is a great new way for them to finally accomplish that.
Yep.
As well as the other ways that we saw in this video.
As well as an easy way to increase the roster of this game.
Exactly.
Now, I wonder if another reason that they're separating the characters is just to help with balance. Because, before they had to, try and balance what were essentially two characters, if not three characters in one. I think separating them out might help with the balance. And in fact, balance tweaks are something we seem to be seeing kind of all over in this game, maybe. And I think that kind of came through in how Sakurai presented the online modes. How, now you can play with friends, but if you want to play with strangers, now there's two modes. Just for fun, and then the other was... I forget.
For glory.
Yeah, for glory, right. And if you play just for fun, you get random arenas, stage hazards are all there.
All the items are there.
Yep, all the items, everything. If you play just for glory, it's going to throw you into a Final Destination only arena with items turned off, and you might even get just one-on-one matches there. So it seems like with online, they are definitely trying to help everyone be able to find the matches they want to play. And one of the interesting things to come out from this is that Final Destination won't just be a single stage anymore. In fact, most of the stages will have a Final Destination form. They still play just like Final Destination, but now they have some thematic elements coming from those stages, and I think that's kind of cool. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. It's sort of, to me, a response to the whole Project M thing. I think Sakurai is very aware of the community, is probably aware of Project M, probably realized how popular that is, and sort of rather than have people program it, he can just do it himself.
Right.
And add these Final Destination-like stages for the other stages. And we saw a couple examples of them in the Direct. And, that's never been my bag. I've always enjoyed having items on and more stuff like that, so I'll probably end up playing for fun more. But I think only occasional for glory, and the fact that they're just allowing them to change up so you're not Final Destination every damn time,
right, exactly,
is such a good move.
It's a really good move. Now, speaking of Project M, which you brought up, I can't help but wonder if another element that they showed off, that they barely talked about, might tie into that, and that's the custom moves, where you can basically, as far as we can tell, go in and change how these moves work. Like, I'm guessing, I mean, we saw that their actual, like, how they actually appear on screen and behave completely different from how they normally do. And I'm guessing you'll be able to change, like, the damage, the amount of damage inflicted by them, among other things. And that's something that Project M basically did, was go back and tweak a lot of those moves. So do you think that might be in response, and what do you think of that?
It's very odd. It's something I don't think I would do personally, just because it's not in my nature to tweak these types of things.
Yeah, I'm a purist for the most part, so...
Exactly, but I think it's cool that it's there for people who do want to experiment with that, because we saw that, like, we have a larger fireball for Mario, or a fireball that goes out farther or flies faster, just various stuff like that, which looks cool. I don't think I'll personally use it that much, and it's nice that they don't have that. I mean, that won't be supported for online, so it's just with your friends locally, or amongst the single player potentially. But I think it's a cool little extra. Not something that really does anything for me personally, though.
Yeah, I kind of agree. Like, I'm curious about it more. I'm curious more about it being there than I am, actually wanting to play it. It's a good addition, and it works anywhere like I think it might. I mean, it really does seem almost like a response to Project M. It's like, hey, if you want to make this a completely serious fighter, here you go. Here's how you go about it. Now, I could be looking too deep into things. Maybe it's meant for more playful purposes, which it could be as well. Who knows? They didn't really elaborate on it. So moving on, beyond the new characters, they also showed off a bunch of more of the returning characters, including at least one they hadn't shown off yet, being Yoshi. And he got quite an overhaul. He now stands more upright, reflecting how he's appeared in more recent games. And apparently his moves are getting changed quite a bit too. In fact, a lot of the returning characters are being changed far more than I would have ever imagined going off the Miiverse, daily updates. Like, they are seriously tweaking these characters a lot, which I think is awesome. I just love, because I was afraid of it feeling too much like Brawl. And after seeing this, it really doesn't seem like it's going to be the case. So yeah, what do you think about, the changes they made to Yoshi and some of these other characters?
Well, I didn't see too many different changes with Yoshi, other than the fact that they made a point of him saying it's standing upright now, and that less like that Mario's riding him. But they are saying that he's going to be overall stronger because of him standing upright. But I was looking at his moveset, and I really didn't see anything new in there, other than a few stylistic differences.
Well, and probably, damage and knockback. I'm guessing they're tweaking all those, it sounded like, from Sakurai.
Yeah, exactly. And we saw that a couple, like, some are getting changed more than others. For example, Kirby can sort of walk with his hammer now and do something like that. Plus, he got a new Final Smash, the Ultra Sword, which looks awesome. Yep. Yeah. DDD throws Gordos instead of Waddle Dees. Olimar probably has one of the biggest changes. Yeah,
they totally changed Olimar. And I think for the better. So we talked about in a discussion before, but I think I edited it out. But what we had mentioned was that in all the screenshots, there was only ever 3 Pikmin. And now we know why, because there actually are just 3 Pikmin. And it really seems, and actually, now that you mention it, it kind of seems like they're removing maybe some of the random elements. Because with Olimar, he now pulls the Pikmin out in the same order every time. And then with King Dedede, we now know he throws, the spiked enemies, as opposed to Waddle Dees, which were random before. He might throw a Waddle Dee or a spiked enemy, and now it seems to be just spiked enemies. And that might factor back into the whole balancing thing. It seems like they may be tweaking or toning down some of these random elements.
Yeah, it definitely seems like that. Just to have a set order, people can learn these characters. They don't have to worry about these random things happening to them. In most cases, you don't. Who knows what they did with Luigi's side special, where he sometimes launches himself like crazy and other times just a little bit. So there still may be maybe a few more random elements, but there seems less so. And I was the reason, when you mentioned that there might only be 3 Pikmin, I was like, no, that can't be, because he has to have it for his recovery. And with Olimar, well, his recovery is now the winged Pikmin, which is kind of cool, actually.
I love it. I think that's awesome. It just fits so well thematically with the game. And I like the fact that it's still, because in Brawl, how many Pikmin you had influenced how good your recovery was. And here, it seems like they're doing the opposite, where the more Pikmin you have, the more it weighs you down, and the harder it is to recover, which I think is a really interesting move, because that's going to make it so, basically, having more Pikmin with you, which is usually a benefit, is going to work against you when you're trying to come back.
Yeah, exactly. And it's so interesting how they're doing these new elements, and I think they just sort of did the same thing with recovery with Pit, who his jumps, it used to be his jumps were just incredibly effective. Like, you could recover so easily no matter how far away you were. But now they made his jumps less effective, but he has a much better recovery,
right?
Which I think is an interesting move. And once again, like Kirby, he has a new Final Smash, which also looks much better than his old one.
Right.
But I guess the last new character the old character they concentrated on, other than the fact that the some of the other characters don't have transformations, is Lucario, who is confirmed to be able to transform into Mega Lucario, which we predicted, which always does max damage. Now, the thing that's interesting to me is that they did not confirm how he Mega Evolves. It did not say it was his Final Smash. It doesn't sound like it's a Final Smash because they say it automatically does max damage, so who knows what that means.
Right.
So, what do you think? Do you think it is or not?
That is such a weird thing, right? Yeah, because they and we're going to have to go through the trailer and analyze some things. So what I say now could be wrong. So don't freak out if I get something wrong. We barely had a chance to fully take in this thing. So I mean, I think there's still a chance it could be a Final Smash. I agree. That's probably not it. A few other ideas is maybe it automatically goes into that. When he's too damaged. As we theorized before. Or maybe he has a mechanic like Lil Mac, a meter-like thing, where, depending on either how much he inflicts, how much damage he takes, kind of get back to what I just said, maybe that dictates him Mega evolving. Or maybe it's just a straight-up move of his that has some other detriment to it. Like, maybe it's something that only works for a certain period of time. So you have to be careful in how you use it. There's so many options that could go here. But what do you think?
I don't know. I mean, the most obvious answer, of course, is that it is a Final Smash. It almost has to be. But it definitely could be just another form of the move or some other mechanic. We just don't know. And it's interesting that he didn't make a point to say it, because he did point out the Final Smashes of other characters, but he did not with Lucario. So
and I don't think it was glowing either in that clip. So that does suggest it's not a Final Smash.
Yeah, so it's very interesting how they're going to handle that. It's I don't know.
Yeah, man.
It's wild.
It's crazy for how many things they addressed, how many questions are still left. It's just ridiculous how much they covered here, and yet how much there's still left to know. Like, there's still so much more they can unveil at E3. But yeah, we'll get to that. Now, beyond some of the characters we're showing off for the first time, they also showed off even more of the characters we already know about. Again, we were just talking about Olimar a little bit, but they also showed off more of Rosalina and Luma, Lil Mac, and several other characters, and they shine a little bit more light on how they're going to work too. Like with Rosalina, how kind of as we point out in our analysis, you can throw the Luma out, and he basically functions. It seems like he pretty much functions by himself. Where he still responds to how you move, to your attacks, but he also kind of moves around by himself too, like a more independent version of Nana from the Ice Climbers, which is a really interesting thing they're doing there, I think. And then Lil Mac, they basically showed off how he's gonna be a complete beast when on the ground, but he totally apparently sucks in the air, including his recovery, and they went out of their way to show how much he sucks in the air.
Yeah, when Sakurai himself is saying how terrible his recovery is, it's pretty bad.
Yeah, it's really bad. So yeah, it's again, there's so much here that so much we don't know about these characters, and yet so much we now know. I'm excited to play as these guys. Like these guys just look totally awesome in some of these new additions. But what's your take?
I think all of these characters are looking straight up wonderful to play. There's not a single one of them I don't want to try out. I don't know if all of them will click with me, but I think a lot of them will be fun. Even the Wii Fit Trainer, who has something very unique with the whole deep breathing thing that they could just confirmed, where doing that powers up the rest of your attacks, and then it actually shows that she or he has a long range attack with the Sun Salutation. That's really cool. All of Little Mac's stuff. They even did a little bit more detail on his KO uppercut, which we predicted was based on him getting hits on other players while not getting hit himself. Turns out it's both. It's just getting hit and dishing out hits fills up the KO uppercut, but as a single thing. Like if you dodge it, he has to do it all over again. So it's not like it's a canned animation like some Final Smashes. The thing that just struck me the most with all of these characters, even the returning ones, the Final Smashes look freaking amazing.
They really went all out. Like, I've talked before about how I wasn't a huge fan of the Final Smashes in Brawl, and of course I still don't know if this will change anything. I will say they look a lot better. Like, it really does seem like they're going to make them perhaps more unique, hopefully not share any of them between characters this time, and they just look graphically impressive. Like, the Samus one just looked amazing. Like, you know, where the entire screen just goes black and you can see the energy going through her beam. It just looks so good.
Yeah, that looks good. Rosalina's Power Star just sending waves of things in every direction. As a Mega Man fan, his Final Smash was so awesome to see him along with all these other Mega Men from the series show up. X, Volnut.exe, Star Force. That's so cool. And then even just the Pit's Sacred Treasures, I think, looks visually arresting. Much more so than I hated his Final Smash in Brawl, where it just sends out the little Centurions.
Yep, I agree.
These are just so much more visually interesting, and I love it for that.
Yeah.
But the other cool thing that I mentioned before we move on to the next subject is Wireframe Mac as a new costume. I think this almost confirms that every character will have at least one new costume. Because we got the Wii Fit Trainer, both male and female. We're probably going to have the Villager, male and female.
Right.
Little Mac has Wireframe Mac. Wario already has his alternate one. Why not have alternate costumes from all the rest of the characters if they're putting the effort for these guys?
Yeah, and they already, they did it with Mario, with Dr. Mario before, basically. That could easily return as an alternate skin. I have a feeling you're definitely onto something there. I mean, at the least, I'm sure there's several more we haven't seen, and I'm hoping it would be really cool to have alternate skins for a lot, if not most of these characters. That would be awesome. Alright, now something else that they showed off, which is something I feel like I've been saying this entire time, because it just applies to everything here, are stages. They showed off even more stages, and some new ones, some more of the old ones, some more of the old ones, and then some more of the ones we just barely knew about, like Palutena's Temple, which is actually called Palutena's Temple, so we nailed that one. And it works basically as we both predicted. We had several predictions, of course, but I think our main one was that it was going to be a much bigger arena, like Hyrule Temple, and sure enough, it's huge. It might, I think I might go back and do a size comparison, but this looks to be a gigantic arena, perhaps even bigger than Hyrule Temple, where the elements we saw were just a small part of the level.
It almost seems like a sort of a in-between between Hyrule Temple and Newport City. Because I don't think it's quite as big as Newport City, which thank God for that.
Yeah, that one.
But it definitely seems a bit more condensed. And it's what's so cool about it is that each area of Palutena's Temple looks completely different from each other.
It does. Yeah, I mean, we've seen that in the screenshots. It's like these look like two separate levels, and even though we figured out they were part of the same one, or so other people did. But yeah, I mean, it's amazing how much diversity there is in some of these levels.
You're right. They're just really making these things feel different. And though I guess even between 3DS and Wii U, I mean, the big thing there is they showed off how Battlefield looks different looks in Wii U, and they showed how it shows off in 3DS. And while very similar as far as the stage setup, the backgrounds are completely different. And that's a cool thing. I'm sure Final Destination will probably look a little different. But along with all these other stages, we also got a brand new one in 3DS in the form of Balloon Fight.
Yeah, that's unexpected.
Yeah, unexpected, cool, completely works. It looks better to me than the Mario Brothers and Donkey Kong stages.
Yep, I was thinking the exact same thing. This one looks really cool and is a huge surprise, especially with the fact that it's on the 3DS, which you brought up actually before this discussion. It's not, Balloon Fight's never been on the handheld, so it's definitely an interesting choice, and I think you had some ideas about that, right?
I think they said mostly when it comes to these stages being there, and I think the evidence here is just straight up is that Balloon Fight is on the 3DS version, probably because it's easier to animate there and probably would honestly look better on the 3DS version. While Palutena's Temple wouldn't look nearly as good on the 3DS version, but looks amazing in the Wii U version.
Right.
So I think there's some give and take there to better fit each of these.
Yep.
And I mean, I think for the most part they're nailing it I think as we can tell, most of the stages are going to be dedicated to either handhelds or consoles.
Yeah. That does seem to be the case overall, but it does seem like they're definitely We've seen several examples now, they're definitely not sticking hard to that. Now moving on, they also showed off a bunch of new items, including, assist trophies, actual items, and Pokemon. So I figured we'd just kind of group them all together real quick and maybe talk about some of the ones that stood out to us. For me personally, I'm pretty stoked for the Pow Block item, which just looks awesome. Looks a lot of fun. And then the Chain Chomp assist trophy, I thought looked really cool. Just bringing in so many more elements of these, franchises that these characters represent. I think just makes the game look even more livelier than it did before, which is saying something.
Mm-hmm. Oh, absolutely. And I mean, as far as regular items coming back, I agree with the power block. That looks like a lot of fun. The fire bar looks like a lot of fun. Just seeing how it actually shortens every time you hit somebody.
Yep.
That's cool. Assist trophies. Elect Man, of course, as a Mega Man fan, is awesome to have in there. And the one that just shocked me the most, Color TV Game 15, which is essentially Pong.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
That is so crazy, and it looks, it's such a unique idea. I'll bet you most people don't even realize that that's a thing by Nintendo. That was basically their first console.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they're really diving into their history for this game. Like, every Smash Brothers game does this, and this game is just taking it almost to the limit, I'd say. Like, this is by far the best one yet, in terms of, referencing their history.
Exactly.
And that's just going off of what we've seen so far, of course, and there's much more we haven't seen. Alright, so...
Well, before we move on, with Pokemon, I love the introduction of the Master Ball, because that is where you're going to get all your legendary Pokemon. Yeah, there's some cool new Pokemon in here. We even get the GameXplain Pokemon mascot, Go-Goat in there.
That's right.
Which is awesome. But the Master Ball itself, that adds an extra level of panic whenever you see a Pokeball now. Because everybody was always scrambling for the Pokeball before. Now when you see a Master Ball, that's a guaranteed legendary Pokemon that's going to be devastating. That's going to be just a whole new level of panic. I love it. And yeah, it's just, there's so much stuff. Eevee has potential with all his evolutions and all that stuff, so who knows what he can do there. It's a love letter, really.
Yeah, that's totally how it seems. So, I feel like we've discussed most of the big things now. There's tons of little things we could discuss that we'll come back to, after the analysis. But there's one final thing I want to close on. What do you think about this game going into E3 now? What's your hype at, and what do you want to see or expect to see from Smash Brothers at E3?
Well, they'll definitely be playable. We always expected that. This is almost guarantees it, especially with the 3DS version coming out in the summer.
Real quick, and that actually ties into, that's something we theorized about in our last discussion, I think. We were like, well, maybe this game's going to be ready a lot sooner than we thought. And we were kind of half right, because only the 3DS one is. But it's following what they did with Mario, on the Wii, with Mario Kart Smash Brothers coming out just within months of each other, and it's the same thing here.
Yeah, definitely. And as far as what else we'll see, with it releasing on 3DS so soon in the summer, we're going to have a complete character list by the summer. That is very key. So I think that's going to be a big thing. I think we're going to get more character reveals. A lot. I mean, when they say summer, I'm expecting August to be completely honest.
Yeah, I think that makes sense.
But as far as E3, just probably more character reveals, probably a couple more stage reveals, and just a better sense of how the characters play. Because that's going to be a lot of Miiverse posts updating that. The line for Smash Brothers is going to be insane.
Yep, that's for sure.
But yeah, I think it's just... Basically, they're just going to slowly paint us a clearer picture of the game, which is exactly what they did with the Direct today.
Yeah, that is entirely what they did. We were wondering what they were going to announce here, and I think they blew away both our expectations. Neither of us expected this much, and it really seems like they're kind of getting the groundwork out of the way for even bigger announcements, or more central announcements at E3. I'm guessing at least another character. And now that we know how the game's going to work better, they can focus on other details at E3 and just allow us to play the game too. So I'm stoked, man. I can't wait to see more of this game at E3. What they've shown off here is more than enough to keep us busy for a while.
Oh yeah.
So we're gonna have tons of coverage coming up, guys. So with that, thanks for watching. Of course, make sure to stay tuned to GameXplain.com for tons more on Smash. And of course, keep an eye on our Facebook and Twitter pages at GameXplain. There are links in the description below. Good way to keep up to date with everything we'll be posting, which is a ton. And that's it. So thanks for watching. Bye.